Good morning. Welcome to the ASU Lecture Series program. I am Darian Rivera, a biology major, a freshman. I will serve as the presider for the program this morning. I would like to ask that all electronic devices be silenced at this time. All gentlemen remove their hats inside. We will now proceed with the printed program with an introduction of the speaker by Mr. Cordero Childress, followed by the keynote address by Mr. Randy Williams. Thank you.
Good morning. Servant, speaker, motivator, and author, Mr. Randy D. Williams is a modern-day Renaissance man. His passion for service and success was shaped by his own experiences. Mr. Williams tapped into his sense of purpose after losing two brothers, both under the age of 25. These events ignited his desire to effectively utilize the time he has on earth to make the greatest impact possible. As an author, Mr. Williams knows how empowering it is to read, and as a result, he founded Urban Readers Association to promote and encourage reading to the next generation of leaders. Also, he founded Project 1322 to mentor and teach the youth about entrepreneurship in order to empower their communities. Mr. Williams frequently speaks to colleges, corporations, and high schools all over the country on the topics of leadership and motivation, and continues to invest several businesses through his company, Ovation Holdings, Ltd. He is from Camilla, Georgia. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much, sir. Before we get started, I would like to say that these microphones pick up everything. And I feel like RoboCop right now. I have two microphones. So before we get started, can we have a hand for the person who made this possible? Speaking to her on the phone, she really cares about the students. It's hard to find people who are passionate about what they do, caring about your future. These microphones are a little high, guys. Who really care about the students' future. And when speaking to her on the phone, I hear the passion in her voice when she's talking about you. Like, I want to see you guys be successful. I want to see you do your best. So can we have a hand for Ms. Deidre Harvey, please? Thank you so much. Now I know the young man who did my introduction, before he got started, he told you guys to silence your cell phones. I'm actually going to tell you to do the opposite. I want you to turn your phones on. If you have your phones, I want you to pull them out. Pull your cell phones out. You got that text message you've been waiting to send. I know you wanted to. So I want to encourage you guys to follow me online. Now, if you see anything today that is going to catch your attention, anything that is quotable, anything that you would like to share with somebody else, I encourage you to share it. All right? So feel free to take pictures. If you want me to pose for it, I'll pose for it. You know, just let me know. You didn't pull your phone out? I thought you wanted one. All right, so I encourage you guys to share at CEO Randy. There it is. Thank you, Deidre, for doing that. All right, so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to cover 2 points. I'll go over 2 of my points about what I'll be speaking about today. Then we'll open up for question and answer. We'll do about 5-10 minutes of question and answer. So if you guys have any questions about what I said or about anything in general, feel free to ask that. And then at the end, I'd like to come back with my last and final point. Will that be okay, Deidre? All right. To kind of wrap everything up, my last point will be the most important point, and we'll kind of tie everything that we're doing here today, we'll tie it together for you. All right? So I'm still waiting on my family to get here, so if you see me stalling, that's why I'll be doing that. All right? So again, thank you guys for being here today. 1982. 1982 was a very, very important year. There were a lot of things going on that were great in 1982. In 1982, you want to guess what the #1 song on the radio was? How about the artist? #1 artist in the country. Michael Jackson. #1 song was Beat It by Michael Jackson. Dr. J, Julius Erving, led the Philadelphia 76ers to an NBA championship. Any basketball players in the audience? Got one. And also in Chicago, there was a host of a talk show that came on very early in the morning called AM Chicago. And her name was Oprah Winfrey, and nobody knew who she was in 1982. So while all these great things were going on in 1982, there was also something very, very dangerous happening in neighborhoods all across the country. It was the introduction of recreational drug usage, primarily to urban neighborhoods. So in the early 80s, the people used drugs like, cocaine, heroin, and of course marijuana. And if I offered you some heroin today, you'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. That's crazy, right? I hope you would say that. But today, if you think about it, like Molly or ecstasy or spice or whatever drugs they come up with tomorrow, it was the same thing. It was a new drug, people wanted to try it, and they were just using it to have fun. They would use it when they partied. Nobody knew the long-term effects of that drug. So we can see it today, though. We can see how that drug affected people, and it's still affecting our communities. So as a result of that, there were a lot of young parents. They became parents very young, and their kids were affected by this drug usage. And I'm sure you guys know some of them. So if you had been here in Albany, Georgia in 1983, you would have seen a little boy sitting on the couch, no shirt on. His nose was running because he had a cold, and he was eating a bag of Lay's potato chips. And as he sat there and ate the potato chips, there was a knock on the door. And through the door came this little old lady. And she took the boy, she picked him up, she cleaned his nose, and she asked a question that would forever change his destiny and hers. She asked, can I take him home with me? And she took him out of that environment that he was in. Now, Tony Robbins says it like this: the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of the questions that you ask. That's just a side note for those of you taking notes. The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of the questions that you ask. So she asked the question, can I take him home? So she took the boy home, and he lived with her for the next 18 years. He graduated from high school. He graduated with honors from college. He went on to become an author, an entrepreneur, and a speaker. And that boy is talking to you today. So I realized as I look back on that situation is that in that one moment, my grandmother, who was a little old lady, she changed not only my life and hers, but she changed an entire generation. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How to become a generation changer. The most important aspect of becoming a generation changer is to think like a generation changer. So here's what we're going to discuss. 2 ways to think like a generation changer. We're going to open up for questions, and then we'll come back at the end, and I'll give you the last and the most important point, the most important aspect of thinking like a generation changer. So when I got to school in the year 2000, I graduated from high school in 2000. Take a guess on what was the hottest technology device known to man that every college student wanted. He said a laptop? I could dream of having a laptop. A pager? There you go. She said a pager. Now, for those of you who don't know, it was a specific type of pager. It was a 2-way pager. All right? So for those of you who don't know how that worked, 2-way pager device was about this big. So you would flip it open, keyboard on one side, screen on the other side. You wanted to send a message, you type up a little message, you send it to that next person. It was in rap songs, Jay-Z was talking about it, so we had to have it, right? I couldn't afford one though, so I saw them use it, all right? So this was the hottest technology device, so 2-way pager. Now, what was the problem with the 2-way pager? Why don't we have them around anymore? Because we got cell phones, right? Now, the 2-way pager lasted for about maybe 1 to 3 years, before it died off. And it wasn't long before cell phone companies got the bright idea that, hey, we don't need a separate device. We can just incorporate text messaging right into the phone. Now, I know you guys take that for granted now, but in the year 2000, it wasn't like that, all right? So they incorporated into the phone, and they made 2-way pagers obsolete. All of a sudden, your 2-way page on your desk became a paperweight. Nobody wanted it, all right? So that brings me to my first point, how to think like a generation changer. Generation changers think next instead of now. for those of you taking notes. Generation changers think next instead of now. So it's not enough as a college student to just sit here and think about only what you're going to do today. Just think about it. When you were in high school, there was a bell that told you everything that you needed to know, right? There was a bell that rang when it's time to go to class, go to homeroom, time to eat lunch. Here's your lunch schedule. This is the lunch that you have. You have the late lunch, so you're going to be hungry most of the day, all right? This is when you go to study hall and these type of things, right? I would venture to say that most of you, your parents had to wake you up in the morning, right? So if you get to campus and your alarm clock goes off and you just turn it off and you roll back over and you never show up to class, nobody cares, right? It can feel like that sometimes, right? It's just you. Nobody's gonna knock on your door and say, hey, you got class at 9:50. You need to come here, a handsome speaker who's from Camilla, Georgia. You need to be in the building because you don't want to miss that. All right, nobody's gonna tell you that. So as a college student now, everything is on you. And you can't afford to only be thinking now. You have to be thinking next. So I can't only think about what I'm going to do today in class. I got to think about the quiz that I have next week. I got to think about the exams that I have in 2 weeks. I've got to think about the sports. I got to think about how I'm going to balance having being in these organizations and also being able to have fun with my friends at the same time, right? All right, you got to create your own schedule. And as a generation changer, that's the most important point. You cannot afford to be behind. You've always got to be one step ahead. So even for those of you who are here, and I understand how it is as a college student, you just get so caught up in going to class and just passing class that you don't think about the future. You don't think about, man, I'm going to need experience in my field. So you don't think about doing an internship until you have your actual internship class. Or you don't think about, you don't think about doing an internship, or you don't think about researching a career field beyond the salary. You know, you just think about, man, I just got to get out. My number one goal is just to get out and get out. And what you find is that a lot of people, when they get to that senior year, they don't really want to graduate. So you see a lot of people that should have graduated a long time ago still hanging around. That's one of the reasons why, because they don't really know what they want to do. It happens so fast, and those 4 years really go by. So that's the first point. Generation changers always think next instead of now. Now, have you ever heard of a woman by the name of Bronnie Ware? Bronnie Ware. Very interesting lady. Bronnie Ware is a hospice worker, or she was a hospice worker for over 25 years. And essentially what she did was she sat with people who were in the most intimate moments of their lives, knowing that they had months, weeks, and sometimes days to live. She sat with these people at their bedside as she nursed them. And what she began to do was she began to collect this research on these people. All right, she began to ask questions to find out what they valued most in life. So these people who are close to dying, and it's funny how that happens, but most of us won't be honest with ourselves until we're that close to losing our lives. So these people that are close to dying, they begin to be honest with themselves, and she would ask them questions. And she came up with some themes, some reoccurring themes. So she came up with the top 2 reasons or regrets that people had as they lay there, as they died. And the number 2 reason, very important for everybody in this room, the number 2 reason that Bronnie Ware came up with in her research, the number 1 regret that people had was that they wish, and this every man said this, every man said that they wish he had not worked so hard. They wish they had taken more time to spend with their families, and they wish they had focused on their loved ones as opposed to their career. Very, very important, all right? So these are people who were, in many cases, wealthy, who had achieved great business success, but they regretted that they left their families to do it. So very, very important for you guys when you're choosing your career field is to not let your career field take over your personal life. But the number 1 answer, very, very important for everybody in this room, the number 1 answer that Bronnie came up with was that people wish they had lived for themselves instead of living for somebody else. Number 1 answer as they lay on their deathbed. So think about that. Now, I'm going to say, and this is just a guess, I'm going to say that some of you are in this room, You're only here because your parents made you come. Now, I'm not telling you to drop out of college. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is while you're here, you have to find out why you're here. And it's not about a major. It's not about what career field you think you're going to go into. It's more so about you finding and discovering your passion. And that brings me to my second point. Generation changers think passion instead of pay. Passion instead of pay. So those men on their deathbed who were saying, man, I made all this money, but I regretted not spending that time with my family. They were remembering the passion that they had for their families and their inability to hold on to that. Now, I'll tell you what I did when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I went and met with the career counselor. Went to the guidance counselor, told her that I wanted to be in business. And what she did was she gave me a list of majors that corresponded with business. All right. Now, luckily for me, I did really want to be an entrepreneur. But what I did was I went to salary.com and I saw how much people made who were in marketing. All right. And it was something like, $50,000 to $75,000. So I was like, oh, yeah, sign me up. I got that. Yeah, I could see myself making that. I had already picked out the cars that I was going to drive and everything. Right. All right. So I picked my major. And I came to college, and luckily I grasped to it, but that doesn't happen to every student, does it? I can't tell you how many times, and I was talking to some people earlier this morning too, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people change their major. They wanted to be doctors or nurses so bad, but then they get to organic chemistry. And all of a sudden, they don't want to be that anymore, right? All of a sudden, they want to teach, all right? So I can't tell you how many people I've witnessed change their major based on a class. But see, when you're fueled by your passion is going to keep you going even when the class is tough. Even if you have to stay up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to study to get it right, you're going to do everything in your power to do that because your passion lights a fire inside of you. And nothing can put it out, no matter how hard the work is, because you already know exactly what you want to do and where you want to go. So when your pay is not enough, the passion is the only thing that's going to keep you going. All right? So just speaking about passion, I remember for those of you sitting here, you might have the question, well, how do I discover my passion? I kind of know what I want to do, but I don't know exactly what I want to do. Or some of you are saying, well, I'm good at this and this, so I don't really know how to work that out together. So in my book, for those of you who get that today, the last chapter of 7 questions every young leader must answer goes into why it's important to have passion. So in chapter 7, they ask some questions that you can find out. What have you done since you were young? What have you liked since you were young? So usually when we're kids, nobody has really influenced us much. So we have the ability to it's natural to us, if that makes sense. It's natural to us, whatever comes natural. I'll give you a good example. When I was little, I started a lemonade stand. Now, me and my cousin TJ, we set up this little lemonade stand. We got 2 chairs. We set out next to the road. I was really good at drawing, so I drew a sign, and I set it out right there on the street. Now, we didn't have lemonade. We had Kool-Aid, because I'm from the hood. So we had some Kool-Aid. So we made the Kool-Aid, and we sat outside next to the street. And we sat there maybe for 3 or 4 hours. And we didn't sell any Kool-Aid at all. Not 1 cup. All right, that was my first business venture that I can remember. And so as we packed up, I was like, man, this ain't how, the little blonde-haired girl does it on TV. When she sets up, she always makes like she leaves with a pocket full of money, right? But that didn't happen. But I kept trying. And I remember my next business venture, what I decided to do for my basketball players in the audience, if I don't know if it's still out, Slam magazine still come out? Slam? Ever heard of Slam magazine? Well, anyway, it was a magazine that featured basketball players. So basically, they had full-page posters of people, who were dunking or doing something. So I decided, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tear these little posters out, and I'm going to put them in a binder, and I'm going to sell them. All right. I spent $5, bought the magazine, so I cut them out. I put them in the binder. So I went over to a neighborhood that was close to me, and I went to the basketball court. Basketball players, they like basketball, right? It's a logical place to go. I was brilliant as a kid. So I went over to the basketball court and I started trying to sell these cutout posters. They were really just pages of a magazine. And so I started trying to sell them. A bunch of people told me no. They were like, man, you crazy, you get that out of the magazine, right? But 2 people actually bought one. 50 cents each. I made $1 that day. And this is not like one of those stores where you're like, oh, in my day, $1 could take you. Nah, $1 was $1 still. Just like it is for y'all, it was $1. But it wasn't about the dollar amount. It was something about that transaction, man, that just excited me. And my family can tell you that I was always trying to sell something, right? So it was about that passion inside of me, and that was ever since I was a little kid. So it was a natural progression for me to be an entrepreneur, right? So I want you to think about what comes natural to you. Some of the questions that I have in my book, this is a good one. What makes you angry? We're talking about discovering your passion. What makes you angry? So if you see a group of people that's being mistreated, sometimes there's something inside of you that says, man, I really want to help them. You know, what people do you want to help? Or what unique experiences have you gone through? Maybe you lost a lot of weight and now you want to help people go out and, you know, train them to reach their goals as far as their fitness. I don't know what it is, but that's something that you have to sit down with and evaluate. And again, like I said in my book, at the end of chapter 7, there are a lot of questions that you can ask yourself to help you discover what your passion is. Now, as we sit here, I'm reminded of a time when I was in college. And I never forget this day. We were called to the ACAD auditorium, just a small group of us, about something like this. And we sat down and we wanted to hear this speaker, all right? They brought in this guy. I'm like, man, I don't know what this guy's talking about. I got stuff to do. And this guy came in. His name was Marvin Williams. Now, Marvin came in. To this day, I can't tell you what he talked about, but I can tell you how I felt. So Marvin came in. He had on a brown suit, white shirt, and a brown tie. And as he walked through the audience, my eyes stayed focused on him. Every word that he said, I was so impressed. He was so articulate. He was so well dressed. He was so motivational. And he looked like me. He wasn't the old guy that they normally bring in. He was somebody that was in my age group. And I said to myself, man, I would love to do that. I would love to do that for a living. So what you're seeing right now, you're witnessing, is a personal goal that I set for myself coming true, just based on that passion that was inside of me. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to pause for a second, take 5 to 10 minutes of questions, and then I'll come back at the end with the last, final, and the most important point. Question? You got a question? Yes, sir.
My name is Cordero Childress.
How you doing, Mr. Childress?
Doing all right, how about you?
All right. Thanks for that introduction, man. You made me sound like I was actually somebody. I appreciate it.
What's the number one question you get from, I guess, young people who aspire to be entrepreneurs?
Number one question? That's a good question. The number one question that I get from people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, are you aspiring to be an entrepreneur? Okay, cool. Number one question I usually get is how. People always want to know how you did it. And the truth is, before I did it, I didn't know how. You know, before I published my book, I didn't know how to do it. I just started a watch company this month. I didn't know anything about watches. I just did it. What you'll learn is that a lot of stuff is based on personal experience, man. You guys have the greatest opportunity to be entrepreneurs because you have access to any information that you want. You got the internet. When I was in school, we had the internet, but it wasn't what it is. It wasn't that much content available. I mean, you got to think about it. I learned how to use Premiere Pro, which is a video editing software, in like 2 or 3 days, just from watching videos on YouTube, and it was all free. You know, so you're living in the greatest time, really, to be an entrepreneur. There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to. So to answer the question, the biggest question that I get is how, but the answer to that is you just got to go out and do the research. Good question, man. Next question. Where are we at on time? What's your name, sir?
Gary.
Gary? Pleasure to meet you.
I want to know what inspires you to keep going forward when all odds were against you.
When the odds were against me? I heard somebody say this one time, man. They said, you get knocked down and you're at your lowest point and you're laying on your back. You only have the opportunity to look up. So in your darkest hour, no matter what is happening to you, somebody else put it like this. If you're going through hell, keep going. You know, why would you stop? That's the last place you want to stop, right? So when the odds are against you, man, you don't have any other choice but to keep going and move forward if you're already at your lowest point. And this is something I also learned, man. People go through a lot of different situations. And I learned this, your pain is never in vain. So any pain that you go through can always be used to help not only you, but somebody else as well. So that's a good question, Mr. Gary. Next question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Yolanda Ransom.
Yolanda, love that jacket.
Thank you. I just wanted to know, you mentioned about balancing your personal life and your business life and all your endeavors and stuff. How did you manage to do that? And what was your motivation to keep going after you thought you had failed and you just didn't know where to go or what to do next?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Her question was, for those of you who didn't hear it, she said, how do you balance your business life and personal life? And then also, you know, how do you manage to keep going and moving forward after you have failures in business, correct? Is that correct? All right, so as far as the business life and personal life, I just recently got married a little bit over a year ago. So I'm still balancing that. All right, so there are times when I'm up until 3 and, you know, my wife doesn't know when I got into bed, right? Because I'm working on something. So I'm still balancing that. But I've always told myself, even before I was married, that I would never let business, as much as I love it, I would never let it overtake my family. I would never forsake time with my wife and our kids when we do decide to have kids. I would never let that get in the way because that's something that money can't buy. You can't put a price tag on it. So as far as like business failures and overcoming that, I think that when I was, right after I graduated from high school, I had a real estate business, right? So I started in real estate and I wanted to get rich. And again, passion instead of pay, right? So I was so focused on making some money, right? I just wanted to have some money so I could chill, you know, and enjoy nice things. And that was the most important thing to me. You do too. I see you smile at me like that. So I lost over $500,000 in real estate. So you're talking about bouncing back from failure. How could I not? So for me to keep going, my whole thing was I want to prove it to myself that I can do this. All right. I want to prove it to myself that, you know, I'm not the only one who lost money. There were people who lost millions in real estate. You know, there were people who lost their houses and their cars and their family was put out on the street. You know, that wasn't the case for me. So as bad as I thought it was, there was always an opportunity. So you can start with nothing and you can create something from it. So if you think about it, you guys right now, as far as being college students, man, you got the world in your hands right now. So I know people are saying like, oh, I know the same thing people said when I was in school. There's nothing in Albany. There's nothing to do. The school doesn't help you. The school doesn't have anything. It's boring. It's the same thing. But you guys have 10 times more stuff than we had. They got 10 times more businesses in Albany than we had. You got more students, and you got more people like this person and this person who are all interested in business, but they haven't talked to each other yet. So this is like just an audience of people who are hungry, who have the time, who have a shared interest, and it's a great opportunity to take advantage of. So as far as bouncing back from business, again, why not? You control how you want your story to end, so you got to keep writing if it's not the way you want it to be yet. Good question. Any other questions?
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
All right, my name is Jameer Jordan.
Jameer, pleasure to meet
At
you.
what point in your career did you realize that you become successful? And from that point, what was your mindset and what were your goals after that?
You heard my intro, like my bio or whatever, and you probably, oh, I'm sorry. The question was, at what point did you know that you were successful and what encouraged you to keep going to set new goals? You heard my bio, you might think I'm successful, but I don't really think I'm successful yet. You know, I've still got a long way to go in my eyes. So for me, this is what you'll find. Once you reach a certain goal, you'll believe that you can reach a different goal. And so they're always going to go higher. Just like, you know, some of you didn't believe you would be able to graduate from high school. There was a time right there when you were thinking like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it, but you did it. And then you get in college and you get here freshman year and they throw all these classes at you and you're like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. But I assure you, if you keep going and you get to senior year, you're gonna be like, oh man, I got this. And then you have to transition to a new goal. That's why I said think next instead of now. So even here where I am, I got 6 month to a year goals, 3 to 5 year goals, and 5 to 10 year goals. And I even got like goals that are past 10 years for me and my family. You know, when I'm an old man, when I'm sitting back in the rocking chair with my grandchildren, what do I want to be saying? I think about all that stuff. So to answer your question, I don't think I'll ever feel like I'm there yet. Because if you feel like you're there, what's next? I might as well just go in the room and sit down there. So if you feel like you have arrived, I would say that you're sadly mistaken. I don't think there's anybody. If you look at the greatest people in business, they never stop. There's never a time where they stop. They just said they're not going to do it. Their life may have transitioned to something different. You know, you got to take a look at Bill Gates, you know, who was at one point the richest man in the world, and now he's made it his mission to give away all of his money, right? So you got to take a look at guys like Mark Cuban, who owns the Dallas Mavericks. You know, he reached the goal. For some people, that would have been the goal. I just want to own a sports team. He owns it, and now he's still investing in companies, left and right, technology companies. So it never stops, man. So good question. Next question.
Good morning.
Good morning. Where are you? How you doing?
I was just curious on how...
What's your name?
Bria Langley.
Langley. Yes. Bria.
I was
Yes.
just curious on how your dreams and passion of becoming an entrepreneur resulted in you writing and becoming an author as well.
Okay. How did my dreams and passions of becoming an entrepreneur result in me writing a book? This is actually one of my second books. This is my second book, should I say. And how I got started writing was really about helping people. Because I actually started off, man, I would just, you know, sit down and I would think of stuff to say and I wanted to share with people. So I started texting people every morning, like, you know, here's some inspirational words or whatever. I just liked encouraging people. And I actually had so much stuff after one point that I started to write it down and keep track of it. And when I had all of this stuff, I was like, man, I could really, you know, turn this into a book possibly. And so I did that. And I just sat down and wrote it. And I just tried to grasp from things that I've learned that I feel like somebody else could benefit from. You know, you see somebody going down the wrong road and you know that that's the wrong way. You know, I feel like it's our obligation to tell them that. You know, so that's why I started writing that. So thanks. Good question, Bria. One more question. Yes? Oh, I thought you had the mic. So we got about 5 to 7 minutes, right? Okay, cool. You got one question up front? Good morning, sir.
I'm Darian Rivera, and you said that it's that one class that makes you want to change your major. Did you have a class like that?
Yeah, I did. He asked me, for those you couldn't hear, he said, "Is one class that made you want to change your major?" Or I saw people have it. Well, did I have that one class? It didn't make me want to change my major, but I did have a class that I didn't know if I was going to pass, and I failed it. And that was college algebra. I didn't know how I was going to get through it because in high school, I wasn't even good in math. And I was witnessing people who were good in math in high school fail in this class. So I was like, man, how in the world am I going to get through this? Don't look at me like that. You know you're responsible. So I actually had Dr. Okonkwo. It was college algebra, man. So what I did, I knew I had to pass this class if I wanted to go on and graduate college, right? So what I did, I just went to tutoring every night. I went to tutoring every night. If they had extra tutoring sessions in the student center or the library, I went, I made college algebra my whole focus because I knew it was the most challenging class. For most of us, you'll find that your major classes are easy. You know, you like them. You're studying about criminal justice and stuff. Oh, I love it. It's interesting. But when you get to talking these numbers and stuff, and all this stuff is going in one ear and out of the other, your teacher has an accent, you don't know what's going on, people are still talking, you know, it gets kind of crazy. So yeah, that was that class for me. Good question. All right, so let's wrap it up, man. We got about 5 minutes. I'll be available afterwards, man, if you guys want me to sign your books or have any other questions. For this last piece, I'll need a little help. So these two gentlemen, can you guys help me out with something? I need one more gentleman to come up. Volunteer? Yes, sir. Come on up, come on up, come on up. Yeah, can we give these guys a round of applause, please? This is your acting debut. I'm not gonna embarrass you, man, I'm sorry. Just stand right here. Yeah, you stand here. All right, you stand here, and you stand here. All right, so for this last point, my family is here, so I want to get real with y'all for this last point. And this is, hopefully will illustrate the reason why I do what I do, and it also illustrates the last point. I have 3 brothers, so I want to tell you about each of them. We got Gerald here. Now, Gerald loves to have a good time. He's always laughing. You know, that guy that's always getting into trouble, playing tricks on people. I think Gerald's the reason that I'm jumping out from behind the closet and scaring my wife. I still do that to this day. I would do it more if I didn't think she would really be mad at me, but she hates that type of stuff. So he was a trickster, he was a jokester. Loved to get the most out of life, Gerald. Now, Gerald was my older brother. Now, my younger brother, Nico. Now, Nico, he was an entrepreneur. If you remember, gold grills were really hot, you know, back in the day, right? Nico used to make molds for gold grills, so people who wanted to get a grill had to get a mold first. So they would go to Nico and get their mold. So he was a hood entrepreneur, if you will, you know, washing cars. He was always into something. Very charismatic, had a lot of friends and stuff. So now, my other brother, his name is Darius. Now, Darius was a different kind of entrepreneur. So let's just say that he's a different kind of entrepreneur, very, very street savvy entrepreneur. All right, and I learned something from all 3 of them. Now, this is very, very important. So now Gerald, and we're at Albany State, and Albany State embraces the towel and bowl philosophy, which is all about servant leadership. So you'll understand why this is important. Now, Gerald, when he was in his early 20s, contracted HIV. Now, unfortunately, the medicine that Gerald took made him very sick. So you took somebody who was so happy and so lively, and the medicine made him sick to the point where he quoted that he didn't feel like himself. And so he just stopped taking it. And Gerald passed away. Turn around. Now, my other brother, Nico, we used to call him Train. Now, Nico, I told you he was very street savvy, right? So he was actually going to a friend's house one day, and he walked in on a robbery in progress. And as he turned to run away, they shot him in the back, Nico. Now, my other brother, Darius, he's still alive, don't worry. So my other brother, Darius, spent the majority of his 20s incarcerated. And I went to Camilla to visit, and I met his son for the first time. Son was about, I think, 5 or 6 at the time, maybe 7. And he looked me in my eyes, and I could tell that he was staring at me because I looked so much like his father. And they kept telling him that this is your uncle. And, you know, he just kept staring at me. He was sitting on his bike, and he just kept staring at me. And what I took from that was he was saying that you look so much like my dad, but I know I haven't had my dad there to be there with me. Right? So I took something from each of my brothers. So when we're talking about servant leadership, that brings me to my last and my final point. Generation changers think we instead of me. And so early on, I learned from the experience that happened to my brothers is that I got to utilize every second that I got to make the greatest impact. I've got to take something from each of these guys and do something that they wanted to do, and that's how they continue to live. So when you see me cracking jokes, Gerald is still here. And when you see me start a business, Nico is still here. And when you see me balancing family life and entrepreneurship, Darius is still here. They're still living through me. This is why I do what I do. So generation changers think we instead of me. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Randy. Can we give Randy another, or Mr. Williams, another round of applause? And this is more like family to me, more so than a guest. As I've shared with my class before, Randy and I went to college together. We attended Albany State, walked these hallowed halls just like you guys are doing together. We spring break together, clown together. We're student leaders together. And so this is much more like welcoming family back home. And I'm so pleased that he was able to come back and impart his wisdom to our campus and to you guys, because I know you needed to hear it. And I know that you all are going to leave here and take some of what he brought here back to your dorm rooms, back home, back to the classroom, and do the best that I know that you can do. Can you handle that? Sound a little shaky. Okay, I'm gonna hold you to that. So that being said, I typically come up and I always deem my guests honorary Rams when they come and visit. So I don't have to do that this time because I have a genuine solid gold Ram in the bush. For those who, no, I'm just kidding. A genuine Ram here with us, and I just wanted to welcome you back home, Randy, instead of deeming you an honorary Ram, and just thank you for coming and sharing with our students. Like Mr. Williams said, he will be here as we close the program to speak with you all, make a network, share some advice, those types of things. And we also have some books. I know some of the students said, I didn't get one last week, Ms. Harvey. I'm gonna give me one this week. And so that is my hope and my fervent desire. But before we do that really quickly, by way of an announcement, I wanna say it because I said I would. Remember to retool your school today and vote on all of your devices, okay? Got it? Hit all of your devices, all your search engines. We need that money from Home Depot to retool our school, so be sure that you do that on today. I hope that your midterms went well, and I hope as we're moving forward, you all work towards closing out the semester with a bang, as this is our last lecture series for the semester, so I'm gonna miss y'all. Y'all gonna miss lecture series? Yes. That sounded so shaky, but I'll take it. So that being said, I just wanted to remind you of those things and also remind you that on next Friday, our Honors Day, our annual Honors Day Convocation, I know quite a few of you are sure to be honored at Honors Day Convocation on next Friday at 10 a.m. It will be held in the Hyper Gym. You want to do business casual attire, we want you to be there. Classes will be, we won't call it canceled at that time, but classes are to report over to Hyper Gym together during that time period. And so our expectation is that we see you there, and I hope very much that each and every one of you who are here are being honored on that occasion, okay? So that being said, we'll get on with the giveaway. Make sure that you take out your evaluation. If I can get everybody to get their evaluation, hold it up. I need you to complete those for me. I need those for accounting purposes, and I need them to know what type of speakers you would like for me to bring for next year and the things that interest you. And so moving forward, I can have your feedback. But they also serve another very important purpose today. If you would flip your evaluation over, and if you have a stamp on the back that says the Velma Fudge Grant Honors Council, you won a book today. So you have to complete, the evaluation has to be complete. In order to redeem your book. If you did not win, I ask that you stick around just for a few moments. Make sure you meet and greet with Mr. Williams, and I'm sure that I'll have extra that you all will be able to take advantage of. Okay? How many winners I got in the room? It should be more than that. Y'all didn't get a sheet? Everybody should have got a sheet at the door. You got a program with an evaluation. Okay, well, Andrew and Brandon will make sure you have an evaluation, okay? That being said, consider yourself officially dismissed. If you do have a stamp on the back of your evaluation, we'll let you start the beginning of the line against the wall over here. And if you would like to stay and get a book, I have enough, and we'll distribute them until they run out. You can do that as well. If you are in my class, you can come up here. I have the roll. If you need to sign the roll, and Dr. Shelton is over here to my left.